It's been 4 days since the election and 3 days since Trump's victory has been confirmed, and the legacy media is still having an absolute meltdown over the results. They're more and more making themselves look like drug addicts, frustrated, they've been locked away at rehab and can't get another fix of their favorite drug, power. Anyway, today we're going to be looking at how members of the Biden administration and members of the Democrat media arm are choosing to blame voters for the failure of their candidate to clinch the presidency. Starting with one of the most arrogant and condescending members of the Biden White House, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre.
As Gabe mentioned, this administration message to millions of Americans that they're going to wake up the day after the election if Trump won and have their rights stripped away, that democracy would crumble, and the president said today we're going to be okay. So how do you square that?
I can't square that. I'm going to square that in a way that hopefully makes sense, because I've been answering this question multiple times. The American people made the decision. There was an election 2 nights ago. There was. And it was a free and fair election. And we respect the election process. We do. And Americans spoke. And so the job of the president is to make sure we respect that. The job of the president is to make sure that we have a peaceful transfer of power. That is what the American people deserve. And that's what we're going to, it's not complicated. It's truly as simple as that. As simple as that. The president called the president-elect, invited him to the White House. You know why? Because that's customary. That is customary. That is what you do. If you respect what the American people decided, that's what you do. And that's what the president's going to make sure that the Trump transition has what it needs, which is being led obviously by our chief of staff here. Why? Because the president wants to lead by example. It's not complicated. It really isn't. That's important.
It's clear the Democrats are trying to seize at the impending transfer of power as an opportunity to try to draw a parallel to Trump's transition period in 2020. They're likely doing this to claim the moral high ground and frame themselves under the guise of, look, guys, we lost, but we're the good guys. We're playing by the rules. Notably, this was something that Kamala Harris hearkened to in her concession speech. However, it's clear this narrative isn't really resonating. Democrats are struggling to make this message stick, and it seems like they're aware of this. You can tell from Karine Jean-Pierre's flustering and clear frustration. The January 6th line of attack on Trump didn't work during the election, and it sure as hell did not work now, and it will not work now that he's been elected.
Is the message to people who are fearful based on what the messaging was about the stakes?
Well, now you're just twisting everything around, and that's really unfair. No, it is. No, Jackie, it's unfair, because I've been standing here trying to be very respectful to what happened the last 2 nights ago. Being respectful. I've been standing here saying that we respect the decision that the American people made. I've been standing here and saying that the president's going to put the American people first. I've been standing here talking about how the president's going to make sure that they get what they deserve, which is a peaceful transfer of power. I do not appreciate having my words twisted. That is, I have been very clear, very clear about what the president wants to do, and the vice president. We want to make sure that we deliver for the American people. They deserve a peaceful transfer of power, and that's what you're going to see. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
That's wild. She is so bitter and at an absolutely relevant question. Democrats have spent the last half of this campaign calling Trump a fascist and Hitler. Oprah herself, the day before the election, said that if we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible that we will not have the opportunity to ever cast a ballot again. These people were stoking up the flames for the entirety of the campaign, and then when they're confronted with even the slightest pushback about the rhetoric, they storm out of the building. Absolutely incapable of taking any sort of accountability, because at the end of the day, what does that say about Democrats when they spend a large portion of the campaign accusing Trump of being Hitler and a fascist who will destroy democracy, and then they begrudgingly bring themselves to give that man power? Wouldn't you want to save democracy if Trump puts democracy at risk? What's preventing you from doing that? Is it the fact that you were lying all along and purposely trying to divide Americans so you could hold on to power? It's crazy to me how Democrats screeched about Trump being a demagogue for the entirety of his first term, and now they're being revealed to be doing pretty much worse. Anyway, our next clip comes courtesy of Reid over at MSNBC.
A majority of Gen X voted to turn America into an autocracy and to condemn our kids and grandkids to a far-right Supreme Court, probably for the rest of their lives. And it was not just Gen X, because while 91% of black women voted for Kamala Harris, 53% of white women overall voted for Trump, despite the open disrespect and demonization hurled by J.D. Vance and the Supreme Court stripping women's bodily autonomy, courtesy of Donald Trump, who closed his repulsive campaign by dropping the B word on Nancy Pelosi. The breakdown by education was stark. Harris won 57% of white women with college degrees and lost 63% of white women without them. It was also men. Trump won every age group of men, including 60% of Gen X men and 6 in 10 white men. Also Latino men, who despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. Y'all voted with Stephen Miller and David Duke and against your own sisters and chose Kamala Harris with 60% of their votes. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
She is so hateful. You can literally see the hate dripping out of her eyeballs. It's crazy to me that this person has been able to hold on to her job at MSNBC after saying all this and more. She said much worse in the last week. But at the same time, it makes absolute sense why. Because she's at MSNBC and because, well, nobody watches MSNBC. Their reputation is shot. Anyway, Democrats seem intent on harming any possibility of them turning around and winning back the large segments of voters they lost in this election. Seething like this isn't going to make men vote for you. It's not going to make Latino men vote for you either. It's weak and very revealing as to why the Democrat Party finds itself in the current position it's in. Lost the presidency, lost the Senate, about to lose the House, referendums being held everywhere on their shit policies. Here in LA, for example, we made theft illegal again with Prop 36, and we got rid of our woke DA Gascon. Anyway, I want to take a quick moment and go back to this graphic that Joy pulled up with a breakdown of how women voted. The racial breakdown says white, Latino, and Trump. They have Trump twice in there. Clearly, they've got too much Trump in the brain, and it's impeding their ability of having any sort of rational thought.
If you look at the arc of the Biden presidency, he was in really good shape until August of 2021. When Afghanistan happened, he went under 40. She went under 40, and they really lived there until the end of the presidency. He's still there.
Why?
Look,
I'll tell you why.
Because he ran and told us that the adults were back in charge, and that was the opposite.
Yeah, they
of
were
that.
because Donald Trump was a child.
And you know what else?
Yeah.
And you know what else?
He's a
the fact that they wouldn't give these 13 service members' families the time of
bullshit,
day.
Dude.
Time of day.
I'm sorry, but Donald Trump hates veterans. He called them suckers and losers. He did.
That's a lie, and a verifiable lie at that. Even Snopes, a pretty Democrat-friendly fact-checking site, says the claim stemmed from a story by The Atlantic, which relied on anonymous secondhand reports of Trump's alleged words. There was no independent footage or documented proof to substantiate the in-question comments, and Trump vehemently denies that he once called service members losers and suckers. While it was certainly possible that he said those things, Snopes was unable to independently verify the claim. So, yeah. There you have it. Democrats mauling and hoaxing again. This is not how they're going to regain the trust of the American people. I can guarantee.
There was a bipartisan consensus to get out of Afghanistan. That wasn't the point. It was the way it was
Trump's
done.
decision to get out of
hold on. It was the implementation. It was the fact that they took out our soldiers first instead of last, which is you would think would be common sense. And again, it's like you said, we thought the adults were in the room. That's why people voted for Biden. A return to normalcy, a return to competence. He's a lifelong public servant. We thought we're going to get normal, we're going to get competent. And that's what
we
did.
About. We did. And if in the veterans community,
Afghanistan doesn't signal that. Afghanistan.
The wars in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, the Republican policies that led to those wars, the idea that Joe Biden made the final difficult decision, and his administration and his military leaders. I mean, you guys live on the tippy top of bullshit mountain. If you actually think that so many people think that the pullout of Afghanistan was the pivot point, are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, I can read a chart and I can read a poll. I guess you can't. But the reality is when he made that decision.
Your petty insults are so weak, dude. You have no idea. Like, I don't even understand if you hear yourself talking.
Look,
you can laugh all you want, but like I can't read a chart. Like it's
just a second.
so hacky. It's so uninteresting.
Look, the reason that we brought this up is because that was from a Democratic.
If Democrats are trying to rebrand their party as a party of petulant toddlers, then they're doing a terrific job. It looks like everyone associated with this party, even the surrogates and commentators, have absolutely resigned from any form of self-control. Their party is clearly falling apart, and it's not pretty at all.
Particularly the media ecosystem it's not a good one, it's a negative one, it's a radicalization funnel. But what they have done in their online media ecosystem is build a radicalization engine, literally the way militant groups do around the world, that takes people from relatively low-level annoyances with the world. Why are eggs so expensive? Why is my kid learning this new thing in American history in school that I didn't learn? And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way slowly to a full-blown fascist politics. It's an elaborate multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, and there is nothing like it on the pro-democracy side. We don't have when a man is just lost and lonely and not yet radicalized, we don't have the equivalent of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to move that man in a feminist direction. By the way, we should educate men that it's actually really great to live with a strong woman who makes money. It's actually easier. Life is easier.
First off, this dude is absolutely a cuck. Next, you had a Joe Rogan at one point. It was actually Joe Rogan. See, in the past, Joe had interviewed and endorsed Bernie Sanders. He did a soft endorsement for RFK before RFK dropped out of this race and joined Trump. Joe is your Joe Rogan, but leftists are often so preoccupied with purity tests and proving their moral superiority that they're incapable of accepting Joe Rogan as their Joe Rogan. Instead, they'd rather ostracize and attack Joe and try to artificially create their own Joe Rogan in a lab that fits the mold of what they find appropriate. Pretty much the same playbook they did with Harris in this election cycle. And it's pretty much the reason why she lost. The power of Joe Rogan is that he's authentic. It's his down-to-earth relatability. Funny enough, that's Trump's appeal as well. Kamala didn't have any of that. All of her media appearances were contrived and highly edited. And as a result, Americans didn't get a chance to understand who she really is. That added to her constant flip-flopping on issues, at some points even ripping policies directly from Trump, like the no tax on tips and the building a border wall type stuff, made it hard for people to understand who she really was and what she stood for. And in this day and age, building community and relatability is far more important than crafting this pristine image of a perfect, idyllic person. That may have worked for Obama, but it sure as hell will not work in this current media ecosystem. Anyway, speaking of Bernie Sanders, he responded to Kamala's loss in a statement on X saying, it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class people has abandoned them. And you know what? He's absolutely right. That is exactly the reason why the working class Americans have abandoned them. A party focused on waging wars by proxy, trotting out celebrity after celebrity to endorse a puppet candidate that doesn't stand for anything and refuses to acknowledge the failings of the Biden administration. It's a great recipe for disaster. It's a party that's more focused on helping children transitioning than cutting inflation and energy costs. A party that rails against billionaires and having them pay their fair share, but ran a $1 billion campaign funded by over 80 billionaires. Trump, by comparison, had just over 50 billionaires in his campaign, which is ironic considering Democrats have used that talking point against Republicans being represented by billionaires for years. Even during this election cycle, the reality is this party has been taken hostage by the leftist progressive movement. That's why so many traditional Democrats are defecting, like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and even Elon Musk, just to name a few. All that being said, let's check in on The View to see how the ladies are coping over there. But because, you know, they've got a monopoly on coping and seething over at The View.
That I'd like to reframe the conversation. I think Bernie Sanders is wrong. I think the more relevant question actually is, what is wrong with America? I think what is wrong with our country that the Republican Party would choose as a candidate and support a candidate who is an insurrectionist, who is an election denier, who is someone who is twice impeached, a 34-time convicted felon, someone who has been accused of alleged sexual misconduct by 26 women, found liable for sexual abuse. What is wrong with this country that they would choose a message of divisiveness, of xenophobia, of racism, of misogyny, over a message of inclusiveness, a message for the people, by the people, of the people. That's what the problem is. It's the Republican Party.
But can I say something before?
And they think they're going to win Americans back by calling all of us racist and misogynists. You know, it's unbelievable to me that no one has stopped Sunny Hostin during any of her recent rants and told her, do you realize how elitist you sound? Do you realize that you're coming off as though you hate Americans? This isn't a winning message. And I don't think they care. They truly hate regular, everyday Americans. They have disdain for people like us, Latinos, men, Zoomers, even white women for Trump. They hate all of us. And it's never been more apparent. They're not even hiding it anymore. They would rather we all go broke so they can continue funding the endless stream of illegal immigrants entering the country so they can convert battleground states into permanently blue states like California. And at the end of the day, this isn't about representing your interests. It's about extending and expanding their power. They want you to rely on them, begging them for financial assistance.
There is condescending.
The way that the left speaks to its voters. It really is.
A message of joy and inclusiveness?
No, the message of not being educated, being dumb, and what's wrong with America.
Who said that?
Sonny just did.
What is wrong with America?
My point here is that
that's not what Kamala Harris said.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
My point is, I don't blame Joe Biden. I don't blame Kamala Harris. Go back as far as you want. I blame a messaging within the Democratic Party.
You don't blame the Republican Party at all?
Can I just finish my point, please? I obviously have a problem. Anyone has a problem with Donald Trump. The bigger question should be, yes, Sonny, why did they vote for him?
Yes.
In sweeping...
So they need to be introspective.
No, we need to be introspective. If we voted for Kamala Harris, we need to say, what didn't resonate with the voters? Do you know what didn't resonate with the voters? When they were saying we don't feel safe, and the left focused on defund the police and bail reform.
Yeah.
When they said we're worrying about... Can I just finish? Let me just finish real quickly. When they were focused on renaming...
It's only an hour show, ladies.
Joy. When they were focused on renaming schools, there were people saying, hey, students are destroying colleges. I paid for that. I sent them there. They can't learn. And everyone apologized for it and didn't want to attend to it. They also denied the border was a crisis and kept saying, no, it's fine. This is not a...
There was a border bill, though. There was a border bill.
Yes, but Joy, my point is they screamed. They didn't vote for him because he's a racist or a misogynist. They voted because they needed help in their everyday lives.
This whole interaction is a great example of everything wrong with the Democrats. They're so worried about blaming everyone else for their failures that they're incapable of recognizing why regular folks hate them.
Liberal. And so I hope that Joe Biden makes the next 10 weeks as consequential as he can. I don't care about drawing outside the lines or what Republicans may think about it. This is within your purview. You can actually do it, and you should do it. And, one more thing, John, is you have a hell of a vice president right there who has a legal pedigree to sit on the Supreme Court. And let Republicans go crazy and ape. I'm even mentioning that option.
You floating? Are you floating? This is 7:39 a.m. on the East Coast. Did Bakari Sellers just float Vice President Kamala Harris as a potential Supreme Court nominee?
Not only am I floating it, but I want to stir up everything. I want people's heads to explode this morning so we go into the weekend just knowing that the chaos has not ended just yet.
Retarded. Desperate and retarded. That's the only way I can describe what this guy's saying. There isn't even a seat open in the Supreme Court. No justices have announced they'll be stepping down. They're all alive as far as everyone knows. So what is Bakari Sellers suggesting? That Biden overrides the Constitution and installs the hollow shell of a person that is Kamala Harris onto the Supreme Court? Not only would that be impossible, but that would be political suicide for a party that's already in freefall. It would be further evidence of the Democrat Party's tyrannical aspirations. But you have to admit, it does match their playbook because it's exactly how they made Kamala Harris their presidential candidate. They threw the will of 8 million of the registered voters who voted for Joe Biden in the primaries out the window and installed her. So why even call yourself Democrats if you're so against the democratic process? Maybe it's time for a rebrand. Maybe call yourselves the National Socialists. Would be more appropriate name to go by if you collectively can't contain your tyrannical aspirations. Anyway, the next clip is of Charlemagne the God, and it's a terrifically surgical exposure of how disingenuous and dishonest everyone who was writing for Kamala Harris was.
I think that she should keep calling Donald Trump a fascist. And I think that Americans need to keep looking at the rhetoric of Donald Trump, because I don't know why we're even thinking about electing somebody who's talking about putting people in camps. I don't know why why we want to elect somebody who's talking about mass deportation. I don't know why we're having this conversation about somebody who wants to terminate the Constitution.
Don't y'all find it strange that now that he's won,
They're not calling him a threat to democracy. They're not calling him a fascist. I mean, damn, on Monday.
They're not calling him anything.
They can. On Monday, they was just calling him that. I would think that, if you really believe that, then somebody's speech would be about how America effed up and how things are about to be really bad.
Leaving that man
He's
alone.
the most powerful man in the world now.
It just makes you wonder how much of it did they really believe or how much of it was just politics.
Those two clips are just about 2 weeks apart, and from looking at them, I don't see anyone more qualified to answer Charlemagne's question than Charlemagne himself. He was literally out there just a couple of weeks ago doing the very thing he is now questioning. So I think the bigger question that should be asked is, how much did Kamala Harris's campaign pay you to say all that, Charlemagne? Because her campaign likely paid him to go out as a surrogate for her to counter Trump's ads featuring Charlemagne, criticizing Kamala Harris's policy proposal to use taxpayer money to give illegal immigrants transition surgeries. After all, this is the same campaign that spent $100,000 to build a Call Her Daddy set for Kamala's interview. So how much money did they waste on all these surrogates? I don't know. Politics is a dirty game, and everyone playing it is just looking out for themselves. It's hard to not be cynical nowadays, but we have to keep some semblance of hope, because if we don't, then it's truly all over. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.